You ever stop and think about why you can just trust the things you buy? Why you can be sure your food is safe or that the phone in your hand isn't going to, burst into flames? Well, believe it or not, the answer has to do with a very unlucky woman, a bottle of ginger beer, and a decomposing snail. Yeah. Let's dive into this truly bizarre story that almost 100 years ago built the foundation for the rights we all have today.
I know, it sounds like the beginning of a terrible joke, right? A snail in a bottle. Changing the world? But in the world of law, the answer is a huge, resounding yes. This one, single, frankly disgusting discovery kicked off a legal revolution.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1932. A woman named May Donahue is sitting at a cafe in Scotland. Her friend buys her a ginger beer, she drinks some of it, everything's fine. But then, as she pours the rest of it out, the rotten remains of a snail flop into her glass. She gets incredibly sick and, understandably, she wants someone to pay. The only problem was, who exactly was responsible?
And this is where the story goes from being just a stomach-turning incident to a really fascinating legal puzzle. See, Miss Donahue ran smack into a huge brick wall, something lawyers at the time just called the contract problem.
You see, the way the law worked back then was pretty rigid. You could only sue someone if you had a direct contract with them. So, the manufacturer had a contract with the cafe owner. Check. The cafe owner had a contract with Miss Donahue's friend who bought the drink. Check. But Miss Donahue, her friend gave her the drink. She didn't buy it. She had no contract with anyone. So in the eyes of the law, she was basically a ghost in the whole transaction.
And this just lays out the injustice of it all so clearly. You had a whole chain of people with legal contracts, the manufacturer, the cafe owner, the friend, and they're all perfectly fine. The one person who was actually harmed, who got seriously ill, had absolutely no way to get justice. The law offered her zero protection from the company that put the snail in the bottle in the first place.
But this didn't just go away. This seemingly small case of injustice climbed all the way up to the highest court in the UK. The case was called Donahue v. Stevenson, and it was here that a completely radical new idea was born, one that changed everything, the neighbor principle.
So what the court did was frankly revolutionary. They decided to look past the strict, rigid lines of a contract. They came up with this simple but incredibly powerful idea that you owe a basic responsibility, a duty of care, to people you can reasonably guess might be harmed by your actions. They called these people your neighbors, in a legal sense.
And this is the line, right here, from the judge, Lord Atkin, that changed everything. Closely and directly affected. With just those few words, the old legal barrier was shattered. The court was saying a manufacturer's responsibility doesn't stop the moment they sell something. No, it extends all the way to the final person who actually uses the product.
So, what did this actually mean in the real world? Well, it created a whole new set of rules. It meant that anyone who makes or sells anything now has a fundamental responsibility to the public, something we now call a duty of care.
It really boils down to this. A company owes a duty of care directly to you, the person who ends up using their product. And, crucially, that duty exists even if you didn't buy it yourself. Their job is to prevent any foreseeable injury, like getting sick from a snail they should have known might end up in a bottle. This one case created a massive, powerful new shield for all of us.
All right, so you might be thinking, okay, fascinating old story, but what does some 90-year-old snail have to do with my life today? And the answer is pretty much everything. This isn't just a dusty old history lesson. It's the invisible legal framework that protects you every single day.
And I'm not being dramatic here. Almost any time someone is harmed by a faulty product or a careless service, the legal arguments trace right back to this one ruling. It literally created the entire field we now call the law of negligence.
And the reach of this idea is just vast. It's the reason we have product safety rules for our electronics. It's the backbone of food safety standards that, keep snails out of our drinks. It even applies to public services, like making sure roads are kept in a safe condition. It is everywhere.
So, that coffee you grabbed this morning? You didn't have to second-guess whether the cup was defective or the milk was bad. That's because the company has a duty of care to you, their neighbor, even if you're just one customer out of millions.
Same thing goes for the phone in your pocket. The manufacturer has a deep responsibility to make sure the battery is safe, the parts are sound, because it is entirely foreseeable that if they mess up, you, the end user, could get hurt.
And of course, it applies to the really high-stakes stuff, like the car you drive. That manufacturer's absolute duty to make sure the brakes work and the airbags deploy, that is a direct line, a direct legacy from May Donahue and her terrible bottle of ginger beer.
So here's where it all leads. This one simple legal idea, born from a snail, has protected people for almost a century. But it also leaves us with a massive question for today. In our super complex world of artificial intelligence and global social media platforms, who is your neighbor now? Who is closely and directly affected by a piece of software or an algorithm? That's the brand new puzzle that the law has to figure out next.